everyone. So the movie Abraham's Boys was in theater for all of a hot second, and now it's headed to streaming. This film is based on a short story of the same name by Joe Hill. And if you're familiar with Joe Hill's work, you already know that he's a terrific storyteller. His writing is vivid and emotionally grounded and usually pulls you in with this eerie elegance. I'd read this short story a long time ago, and while I couldn't fully remember how I felt about it, when I saw that this film was coming out and that it was an adaptation of that story, I got excited and I actually reread the story. I mean, who doesn't want a fresh take on Dracula, especially one that digs into what comes afterwards? So here's the setup. Abraham's Boys, a Dracula story, takes place roughly 15 to 20 years after the events of Dracula. Van Helsing, along with his wife Mina and their two sons, have moved to the United States and settled in California's Central Valley. They live far away from town and off the grid, trying to leave the past behind them. But trauma doesn't stay buried just because you cross an ocean. When a group from the Union Pacific Railroad shows up to survey possible routes, strange things start to happen. Mina becomes convinced that the creatures have found them. Van Helsing starts treating Mina with special elixirs and blood transfusions, and he decides to teach his sons how to kill vampires. What unfolds is a story that spans about a week, maybe a little longer, where unease and confusion build toward this climactic reckoning, or at least it tries to. I wanted to like this film more than I did. I think I expected a little more bite, literally and figuratively, out of the story. After watching it, I went back again to that short story by Joe Hill. And while it has the feel of the short story, there's a lot that happens that is really different. And the biggest change, and probably the smartest one, is that Mina is still alive in the film. In the short story, she's passed away, but in the movie, she's very much alive and present. Her character opens a window into Van Helsing's trauma, their shared past, and the choices that shaped their family. And her continued presence adds emotional weight and perspective that the original story didn't really have time to explore. The character work in the film is one of its strengths. We see Van Helsing not as a monster hunter, but as a man haunted by what he's seen and done and what he believes is still out there. Mina is just not a supportive wife. She's someone who's been broken, living with fear, and it's become part of her daily life. It's kind of part of who she's become. And their sons, they're caught in between. They've grown up in this bubble of suspicion and vigilance, trusting their parents, but also questioning them because vampires? They've never seen a vampire. Do they believe in vampires? Do they trust their father's judgment? Do they even have a choice? These are all some of the big questions that get asked. And the biggest theme in this film is the trauma from how it's experienced to how it clings to a person and how it gets passed down to the children. If you view this as a supernatural film, grounded in real events, with the perspective that Dracula was actually real and the horrors they experienced were real, the movie then becomes an exploration of post-traumatic stress and generational fear. Van Helsing and Mina are survivors, but their struggle for survival, it didn't end with Dracula's death. They brought the war with the vampires with them to the new world, even if the vampires no longer existed. And they raised their sons to be ready for the fight against these monsters. That is the definition of generational trauma, even if Dracula was real. But there's another possible interpretation. Maybe none of it was real. Maybe Mina was sick in London. Maybe Van Helsing tried to treat her with strange therapies and it spiraled into a shared delusion. That interpretation doesn't quite hold up for me because the film never gives us those clues. Even if you find yourself wondering if Mina was really sick or not, you'd have to invent that explanation for yourself and come up with your own evidence. And that feels like a stretch since we need to get that kind of information from the film and not invent it ourselves as viewers. But I know some people will wonder about this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it and how you experienced that part of the movie. So, there's a lot that Abraham's Boys does well, but the best thing just might be the cinematography, which is stark and beautiful. The way it uses shadows and light as part of the story to create suspense adds this eerie stillness to the rural California landscape. It also has this gorgeous period accurate costumes, and they add to the visual richness of the movie. And the sound design also plays this huge role in building the tension. You hear things you're not supposed to hear. You feel the silence kind of pressing in on you. It's unsettling, and it's unsettling in a good way, and it helps to build the feeling of dread and discomfort as the story begins. If you're into horror that takes its time, this one takes its time. And I think that's probably its biggest downfall. It is very slow. The pacing is really incremental in this film, and it just digs into each little moment. And if that's not what you want out of your horror or out of your psychological thrillers, it really will be a tough sit. It leans into that psychological side of fear, and it's rooted in kind of atmosphere that feels old timey. And if you do like that, you might enjoy this film as well. This isn't your traditional vampire movie. It's not flashy. Instead, it's quiet and it creeps up on you. So, the biggest reason that the pacing actually didn't work for me is that by the time you get to the point of resolution, you're kind of wondering, if it's ever going to get there at all. The tension builds and builds and builds, landing on a downbeat that should have felt positive, but it didn't because the horror wasn't really all that scary. And there's also a serious lack of vampires. I mean, I get that Dracula's in the past. Yes, the idea of vampires, it looms large throughout the story, but the creatures like Dracula or his kin or anything that could feed the horror in a more tangible way is mostly absent. It's all suggestion and speculation. I wanted more darkness. I wanted more monsters. I wanted something that was just a little more solid. Instead, it left me with some interesting questions like, did killing Dracula drive Van Helsing mad? Or was he already mad? Is he a serial killer that is in disguise? The answer to these questions might not seem like a big deal, but it actually does matter, especially in this particular movie. So, is Abraham's Boys ticket or streaming worthy, as the case may be now? If you're a fan of horror that leans more psychological than supernatural, or if you just love period pieces and if you're real patient with your slow burn horror, yeah, I think you probably get something out of this movie. However, if you're hoping for a classic vampire story or something more action driven, this might not hit the mark for you, or it might kind of just be one of those meh kind of films when you get to the end of it. So that's it for my review of Abraham's Boys. Have you seen it? What did you think? Am I getting it right here? Did it work for you? Did you want more vampires? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your interpretation of what you actually think happened in this film, because there's a little wiggle room. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Please do give this review a thumbs up, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who might be thinking about watching the video. I'll see you all again soon. Until then, happy viewing. Bye for now.